Here's a table with a fairly detailed comparison of the two deployment models. On the left is the project deployment model, which is the new model that you use with SSIS catalog. And on the right is the package deployment model that you use with integration services, the older form of storing packages in the file system and the MSDB database. All right, so the first big difference is that the unit of deployment is a project, which is a group of files. For the old package deployment, the unit of deployment was packages. You deploy packages one by one. And there was pretty limited support for dependent files. They were stored in the file system, never in SQL Server. Second difference is that parameters are used to assign values to package properties. So this is a new way. Parameters are a relatively new feature of integration services. But in the package deployment model, you use configurations, which is a very nice technique. But you need to migrate from configurations to parameters to use the SSIS catalog. With the project deployment model, you deploy using an ispac file, a .ispac file. And this is a project that contains packages and parameters that is built to what is called a project deployment file. But under the package deployment model, then packages with the .dtsx extension and configurations with the .dtsconfig extension are saved individually to the file system or to the MSDB database. Another difference is that under the project deployment model, a project which contains the packages and parameters is deployed to the SSIS DB catalog on an instance of SQL Server. Under the older system, packages and configurations are copied to the file system on another computer as part of the deployment. And packages can also be saved to the MSDB database on an instance of SQL Server. Another difference is that for the project deployment model and the use of the SSIS DB database, CLR integration is required. But package deployment doesn't require that at all. Under project deployment, you can use environment-specific parameter values, and you can store them in environment variables. But in the older system, again, you use configurations. Under the new model, you can validate projects and packages on the server before execution. And you can use SQL Server Management Studio, stored procedures, or manage code in order to perform that validation. Under the package deployment model, the older model, packages are validated just before execution. But you can also validate a package using dtexec or managed code. Under the new project deployment model, packages are executed by starting an execution on the database engine. A project identifier, explicit parameter values, which are optional, and environmental references, also optional, are assigned to an execution before it's started. And you can also execute packages using dtexec. In the old model, you can execute packages using dtexec or dtexec UI. And then the final big difference is that under the project deployment model, during execution, events that are produced by the package are captured automatically and saved to the catalog. And you can query those events with Transact SQL views. And that's part of what's built into the SSIS DB database. Under the old model, during execution, events that are produced by a package aren't captured automatically. But you can use the various log providers in order to capture different events. So it ends up that the project deployment model in this regard, as far as capturing events, is just way more convenient. The stuff is stored there automatically. But this is part of why you need to, or you probably should, allow SQL Server to clean up the database periodically, because this can be a lot of information that starts to get to be years old, and so just takes up a lot of storage space unless you really need to store that information forever. Okay, so the biggest change with the project deployment model is that you have to think about deploying a project, which could consist of a number of packages and support files rather than just individual packages. And then your projects and packages are organized in folders within the SSIS catalog. And then parameters take on a whole new role when deploying projects. A parameter can be scoped to either the package or the project level. At the project level, a parameter is essentially global to all the packages within the project. A parameter works like a variable within a package, and you can use them in expressions and tasks to set various object properties. And you can set the parameter value at runtime using T-SQL or set a default value during development or deployment. And then, once you've deployed packages with parameters within a project, you can use environments in order to provide values to a set of parameters as a group. An environment stores a set of variable values that a package can reference during execution, and you can store different values for different runtimes. And then at execution time, just point the package to the environment that you want to use, and the package will execute with those values. So this turns out to be quite convenient for changing the behavior of a package in different scenarios, really providing a form of package reuse. Conceptually, it's just like passing different parameter values to a stored procedure or a method within .NET code. What I'm going to do now is convert an existing package in a SQL Server Data Tools project to use the project deployment model. And then I'll deploy it to the SSIS catalog. And along the way, this will give us the opportunity to explore some of the features in SQL Server Data Tools that are specific to the SSIS catalog, as well as how you can deploy a project to the catalog itself using the tools in Management Studio. Okay, so I have SQL Server Data Tools open. It's the Deploy project. This is a project that I've used in other parts of the course. But what I'm going to do now is use the project deployment model and parameters instead of configurations. The project is currently configured to use configurations, and so it's set up for the package deployment model, not the project deployment model. Okay, so if I go over here to Solution Explorer, one thing to point out is that notice that I have the project name called deployment. And parenthetically, it has package deployment model. Now, it's nice that Microsoft indicates that because that's the default for all new integration services projects. I suspect that default's going to change in some future version, but we're not there yet. So if you do File New Project, create a new integration services project, then this is what you end up with. And so the first thing you need to do is change the deployment model from package to project. So I'll just right-click on the project name here, and we have this handy item called Convert to Project Deployment Model. And that fires off this Integration Services Project Conversion Wizard. And like most Microsoft wizards, it has a welcome page or an introduction page that tells you exactly what's going to be happening. The wizard converts an integration services project from the package deployment model to the project deployment model by converting packages and configurations from SQL Server 2008, SQL Server 2008 R2, and SQL Server 2005 to SQL Server 2014. Now, that's not strictly speaking true. I originally created this package using the latest version of SQL Server Data Tools, released well after SQL Server 2014. So this is in the format of SQL Server 2014, but it's still in the package deployment model, not the project deployment model. Because this wizard was started from BI Development Studio, old name, it's actually SQL Server Data Tools, the original project, DTProj, and package, DTSX files, will be upgraded. It's recommended that you create a backup of these files before proceeding. Okay, so a little bit misleading in here, but the overall gist is there. And then it says that there's 7 steps to completing the wizard. And so we'll go through each of those. All right, click on Next. So the first thing I need to do is select the packages. List the packages in the project so that you can select which ones that you want to convert. Project only has a single package, so I'll leave that selected, but I can pick and choose if I want to. But it's really important to understand that I'm dealing with projects now, not just individual packages. All right, I'll click Next. And now we have the Specify Project Properties. So here you can change the project name, change the protection level to security. I'm going to leave the default to encrypt sensitive with user key. And you can also add a project description. And this is highly advisable to do for all projects in a real environment, because you can include basically an unlimited amount of detail about what this project is all about. and some additional instructions for upgrading and so forth. So it's really nice to have that space. All right, I'm also going to leave the project name to deployment, but I can change that as well. And we'll click Next to move on. The next page is the Update Execute Package task. Now, because the project includes only a single package and doesn't execute other packages, this page is empty. But here's where you could reconfigure any packages that call other packages within the project. And basically what it's doing is, as it says here, is it's going to change the access of each package using a project-based reference to simplify deployment. Okay, not absolutely a requirement, but it makes it easier to deploy things. All right, now we have the select configurations. This existing project does have a configuration associated with it. So what this page does is it lets you generate project parameters to replace those configurations. This is one of the primary new features and benefits of the project deployment model. Okay, so I'm going to want to select the configurations, and if there's multiple configurations, I could select them all. So I have the package name, I have the config file, it has the configuration string, so this is the full path to that file, and have a message there saying that file was not found. Okay, so what I need to do here, this project is not configured to correctly use that configuration or to find the file. Okay, so what I need to do is fix that before I go any further. Wizard's not finished, all information will be lost. Do I want to cancel? Yes. And then I'm going to come up here into, actually I need to open up my package. And now come in here and go into configurations because this folder is wrong. So I'll click on Edit. Oh, I can't find it, so I can't do that, so I need to remove it. Okay, so I'm going to close that because the other thing I need to do is make sure that my location here is correct, and it's not. Okay. All right. So the configuration is going to pick up the existing value of these properties that I want to store. So I need to make sure they're in the right location. So I'm going to come here to Packages and Source Data. Okay, so now that folder is correct. So I'll click OK and I'll save everything. Okay, so now I can go in and restart this conversion. Notice that it didn't change from the package deployment model because I canceled the wizard. So I'll execute the convert to, same welcome page, single package, project name, crypt sensitive with user key. That's all fine. There's no execute package tasks, and no configuration because I didn't create the configuration again. Okay. So, okay, come on, select the package. Here we go. Package configurations. Okay, now I need to add the package configuration. All right, I already have a DTS config file, and it's going to ask me if I want to reuse that existing. Sure. Except I can't because that has the old settings in it. So I'll add a new one. I'll select that again, but this time I'm going to say overwrite. All right, I'm going to come down here into the enumerator properties and select the directory, okay, which now has that proper location, and the file spec, which is star.txt. And I'll name this loop configuration and select finish. Close that and now save the project. Okay, so now I have a valid configurations file. So, third time's the charm. Let's go back over here, start the conversion again. Single package, those are all fine. Now execute package tasks. All right, now we have a configuration file. Status is okay. We're good to go. All right, so again, the wizard is going to convert these conversions to parameters, those two properties that I selected. And in this case, I want to clean things up, so I'm going to select this remove configurations from all packages after conversion. After conversion, I don't need them anymore. Maybe I want to keep them around for reference, but in this case, I want to clean everything up. So I'll click on Next. All right, this next page, Create Parameters, lets you select which configuration properties to convert to parameters. I'm going to leave them both selected, but I can opt to exclude any configurations that I don't want. Maybe I know that I no longer need the file directory, so I can eliminate that. I need them both for this package, so I'll leave them. But I am going to change the scope of the parameters to project. So these are going to apply to all packages in the project. Strictly speaking, not necessary for this project, but you have that kind of option for the scope of those parameters. And generally in a real application, a real project, multiple packages, there's probably going to be some parameters that apply to specific packages, others apply to the entire project. Okay, so configure that as makes sense for your particular project. Okay, so the next screen lets you configure the parameters. So this is your last chance to change the value of those parameters. Strictly speaking, I didn't need to go back in and clean up the configuration and have everything correct there, because I could have corrected the values here. But in general, when you start this process, it's really best to have everything in order and correctly set. And so I don't need to do any additional work here. All right, I'll click on Next, and then I get this review that lets you review all of your selections. And I can scroll over and see what my values are, and everything looks good. And so I can click then on Convert. All right, as you can see, that didn't take very long. Simple project. It just had a couple of configuration properties to convert to parameters, and so it's done. And everything passed. And I get this dialog box that says the project has been converted to the project deployment model, but the changes will not be saved until the project is saved in Visual Studio. Okay, good warning. Click out of that. If there's any error messages, I could look at the status. In fact, I can click on that and nothing pops up, even though it looks like a link. And I can save a report and click on Close. And I'm going to take its advice and save the project right away. And notice that it now just has the deployment project name, and it doesn't have that message about using the package deployment model, because it's now fully converted to the project deployment model. Another thing to notice here in Solution Explorer is that there's a new project.params item here. So if I double click on that, notice that I get a list of the parameters along with their initial values. And so now I have yet another opportunity to change the location of the files or the file mask or the value of any other parameters that I need in order to successfully initially execute this project. So everything is done as far as converting. I'm going to do one last test just to make sure everything's working. I'm going to execute the package. None of the conversion things messed up anything. It's reading the files from the right place. There should be 4 files: black.txt, blue.txt, everything else.txt, and red.txt. And the package goes to completion. It's a simple package. Okay, great. I didn't break anything along the way. The only real difference now is that the for each loop container is getting the location and the file mask settings for those files that it's enumerating through from the project parameters instead of a configuration. Okay, so that's happening automatically behind the scenes. In fact, if we go into the for each loop container and the collection, you can see that we have settings for those, and they happen to be the right values, but these are being picked up from the project parameters. Okay, so everything's good. Now at long last, it's time to deploy the project to the SSIS catalog. You can also do that here directly within SQL Server Data Tools. So I'll go back over here to Solution Explorer, right-click on the project name, and select Deploy. And that fires up yet another wizard, Integration Services Deployment Wizard. So you can see there's going to be 4 steps to completing the wizard. Select the project destination, review the selections, and deploy the project. Much simpler process because most of the heavy lifting is done. Okay, so it loads and validates the project, and then it prompts me for which server I want to deploy this to. Okay, I'm going to use local. Local host works here well. I could use the local machine name, that works fine, or some other machine name that I have access to across the network. Okay, I'm going to use the Browse button to browse the path. And there you can see that we have the existing catalog, but we don't yet have any folders, because you can have a very nice hierarchy of folders. We don't have any yet, so I'm going to click on New Folder, and I'm going to call this Learn Now. And I can add a description to the folder, and this is going to create a new project folder on the SSIS catalog. And you can view that under the Learn Now name using Management Studio. Click on OK. Takes a moment, and there it is. I'm going to select that and click on OK, and it builds the path that I need. And of course, I could have typed this in directly as well. So it's going to be the SSIS DB, that's going to be fixed. There's only one catalog and it's got to be named that. Learn Now folder, and then it's going to put it in a subfolder called Deployment, where it picked up the name of this project. But I can change that if I want to. And I can click Next to continue on. And there I can review my selections, make sure everything's fine. If I don't like anything, like most wizards, I can go back and change stuff. It displays the command line there, because this is actually using a command line tool behind the scenes. It has the source of that project and then the destination. Okay, I'll go ahead and deploy it. And it'll take a few moments to copy everything over. All the objects are created and shredded into the SSIS DB database, which is the backing database behind the SSIS catalog. And as you can see, everything passed. All right, I'll click on Close. And now the project is deployed to the server. So I can go over here to Management Studio, and I'll refresh this. And now I can drill down in there, and you can see that I have the Learn Now folder that I created, and drill down further, and I have projects and environments. I'm not using environments at the moment. Projects, and I have the deployment project. And I can drill down further and see that I have a single package that was deployed. All right, now, again, I'm using the SSIS catalog, so I'm connected to the database engine, not to integration services. I just can't emphasize that enough, because you're no longer going back and forth in Management Studio between the database engine and integration services and having to log in 2 different places and running Management Studio as an administrator and all that. Just much simpler management and configuration. Okay, so now that the package is here in the SSIS catalog, I can right-click on this and select Configure, because I can change some of the configuration settings for the package. Okay, and one of the things I can do in particular is access the parameters. But this is kind of strange. There's no parameters listed. I have 2 parameters, so must not have created them, right? What about connection managers? Well, there aren't any connection managers, so that doesn't matter. But the reason is because I didn't create any package scoped parameters. They were project parameters. Now I could have a mix. If there were any package parameters that I had created in the project, they'd be listed here. Notice that I don't have any ability to create any new parameters. But I can select one of the other options here. In fact, any of the options, all packages and the project, entry point packages and project, or the project itself. Any of these options will display those parameters because they're project level parameters. So that's the specific project. This is all entry point packages, parent packages essentially, and the project. And this is all packages and project. So I get the same results because all of my parameters are projects. Okay, just for clarity, I'm going to use the project name in order to display those. And here is where I have yet another opportunity to change the values. This is now separate from the project within SQL Server Data Tools. It's deployed to the SSIS catalog, and I can make the changes here, and this will be saved, persisted with this instance of the package or the project in the catalog. Okay, so be very clear on the difference between all those different options. Okay, I don't need to make any changes there, so I'll just click on OK. All right, and so I can also execute the package. So I'll select Execute, and I get a similar dialog box. Yet another opportunity to change the location and change the file mask here. I can also make changes to connection managers. I can connect for the purposes of just this instance of execution. I can change these so the package executes using my changed values. And then I can also select any advanced properties. I don't have anything there, but this gets into logging and various other things. Okay, so I'm ready to execute, so I will click on Execute there. Operation ID2 has started. For information about package executions and validations, open the Integration Services Dashboard report for the SSIS DB node. So that is essentially just telling me that I can get information about the package execution here from within the SSIS catalog. And I like to open the overview report now. I'm going to hold off on that for just a minute. And there's the first dialog box. So I'll clear past that, and past that, past that, and past that. And the package is now executed. And now I'll come back here and sure, let's take a look at that report. And as you can see, you get a fair amount of information about the execution of the package. It's important to understand this is all saved in the SSIS catalog. It's also there for free as such. I didn't need to configure logging. I didn't need to change the project or the package in the catalog in any way to get this information. I can get more information. I can do other things with logging just like any package, but I get all of this for free. Okay, so it tells me where I am, date information, view all messages, view performance. You can see the duration of the time. So I yacked for so long it took almost a minute to execute the package. Gives you the location. This is the path within the catalog. Status was succeeded, caller, and so forth. And then execution overview. And it gives me some basic information about the tasks that executed. So remember, it was in a loop. It found 4 files. It executed the script task 4 times. And so it executed the package, the for loop container, and looped through it, and we got all of those tasks. And then you can also see the value of parameters. So these are the 2 custom parameters, but then there's also some additional, essentially bookkeeping kind of parameters that it uses as well. And so now I have a record of this execution of the package.